به نام خداوند بزرگ و توانا، د لوی او بخونکي څخه تعالی په لوی نامه د ښاغلی محمد خالد پاینده د مالیې وزارت سرپرست وزیر، ښاغلی انورالحق هدي د کرنې اوبو لګولو او مالدارۍ وزارت سرپرست وزیر، همدارنګه ډاکټر رامیز آلاکپروف د معاون نمایندگی خاص سرمنشی سازمان ملل متحد، د طبیعي پیښو پر وړاندې د مبارزې وزیر ښاغلی الحاج غلام بهاودین جیلانی، همدارنګه ډاکټر صاحب وحید مجرو د عامې روغتیا سرپرست وزیر، ښاغلی حیات الله حیات د کلیو بیا رغونې او پراختیا وزارت سرپرست وزیر، ټولو په اجازه ستړي مه شئ، ورځ مو په خیر. امروز برنامه زیر عنوان درخواست مشترک کمک‌های بشردوستانه دولت جمهوری اسلامی افغانستان و سازمان ملل متحد در دفتر مرکز رسانه‌های حکومت تدویر یافت. Good afternoon everyone. Thank you to each and every one of you for being here and with us today. So we are pleased to welcome you all for the giant humanitarian. د خبرونې په دې برخه کې قاري صاحب ته بلنه ورکوو تر څو راشي د قرآن شریف څو آیتونو باندې غونډه پیل کړي.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. فقلت استغفروا ربكم إنه كان غفارا يرسل السماء عليكم مدرارا بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إذا جاء نصر الله والفتح ورأيت الناس يدخلون في دين الله أفواجا فسبح بحمد ربك واستغفره إنه كان توابا. صدق الله مولانا العظيم. اللهم ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.
له ښاغلي سید جاوید کاظمي څخه یانونه مننه او تاسو راغلي مېلمانه نن د بشري مرستو ګډه غوښتنه د افغانستان اسلامي جمهوري دولت او د ملګرو ملتونو سازمان غونډې ته راغلي او په دې برخه کې د مرکز د رسنیو د حکومت له تخنیکي همکارانو څخه په درنښت هیله کوو تر څو د هیواد ویاړلی ملي سرود په پار تاسو پلی کې او تاسو په درناوی ودرېږئ.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Your Excellencies, Ministers, representatives of international organizations, colleagues, representative of media, partners from civil society. Thank you very much for attending the event today. First of all, I really appreciate everyone's presence today in solidarity, and I would like to begin by thanking Excellencies Ministers and the Cabinet for hard work and coordination which is being exercised these days to respond to a critical humanitarian situation in the country, conditioned by 40 years of war, recurrent natural disasters, displacement, poverty, and the raging COVID-19 pandemic. It is because of that big humanitarian needs that we have gathered today here. First of all, if you would look at our humanitarian response plan, which we published at the beginning of the year, we already noted that at least half of the population of Afghanistan is in need of humanitarian assistance, is in need of protection support. Due to the current emergency and drought situation, nearly 1/3 of the people in Afghanistan are facing crisis level of food insecurity, and nearly half of all children under 5 are at risk of acute malnutrition. Pre-existing humanitarian needs are further exacerbated. I noted the drought. We are talking about COVID-19 and now escalation of military activities, escalation of conflict and war is causing more suffering. Then we're talking about the drought. This is the second drought which impacts Afghanistan in 3 years. Afghanistan is vulnerable to climate change, and this has a devastating effect on the households, on the agriculture, and on the nutrition status. I have recently visited Mazar al-Sharif. I went to Kandahar, and I was in Kunduz. I visited hospitals and met with IDPs and people who were on the move. I've listened to their stories, and they're heartbreaking. One family in Kandahar told me that they were on the move now for 3 months. An extended family of 50 people, 4 women were pregnant and delivered babies in these 4 months. 3 of those babies died. This is an extremely high number as an illustration of a suffering, extreme suffering, which the people are experiencing due to malnutrition, heat, dehydration, and the conflict. Humanitarian organizations are present here, and I would like to welcome and recognize presence of non-government organizations, and as well as international organizations who are partnering with the ministries and are responsible for delivering immediate assistance on the ground. I would like to welcome and applaud 155 humanitarian organizations who are providing support to the vulnerable people in 394 districts of Afghanistan. While they're doing so, it has not been easy. Already this year, 25 humanitarians have lost their lives, been killed, while delivering essential life-saving humanitarian assistance. 63 were injured. Humanitarian work is impartial. Humanitarian workers are not a target, and that's a message we would like to reinforce today. Through the generous support of the donor community, which was given to us, we were able to reach 3.7 million of people in need in the first quarter of this year. However, the needs are far greater. At the beginning of the year, we appealed for $1.3 billion as the amount required to support the ongoing humanitarian response. We would like to thank generosity of our donors who have contributed nearly $450 million this year, with half of the contribution coming from the United States of America. However, the generous contribution of $450 million represents only 37% of the needs. The needs are so much greater. And the continued assistance is needed. As noted during my visits to Kandahar and also in Mazar and Kunduz, right now we have stocks of the supplies, but if more money will not come, in a month and a half towards the end of August, we will run out of stocks and we will not be able to provide the required assistance everywhere, as we would like and we would want to do. If more contribution will not come, without sufficient time, severe hunger will increase, and nearly 700,000 people will not receive monthly food assistance currently being delivered by our partners. 1/3 of the population, mostly in hard-to-reach areas, will not be able to obtain critical health services. And at least 500,000 people will be cut off monthly water and sanitation support. Therefore, at today's meeting, I would like to thank everybody who has been so generous in supporting us, including our top donors. I would like to thank the government for providing required support and for continuing to facilitate the work of the humanitarians on the ground. I would like to express a gratitude to government and ministries for their flexibility in mobilizing resources to respond to urgent needs of the people of Afghanistan. We are at a difficult juncture. Our ability to help people of Afghanistan, to provide for the needs of children, women, young people on the ground, to make sure that they don't suffer from hunger, dehydration, and the burden of the disease is not increased, that success will only be achieved through our solidarity, through our ability to join forces and to work together. I would like to thank you all for your attention and call you to a continued solidarity and joining forces in this hard work. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much to Dr. Ramiz Alakbarov, Deputy Special Representative and the UN Humanitarian Coordinator. او د غونډې په دې برخه کې د مالیې وزارت سرپرست وزیر ښاغلي محمد خالد پاینده ته بلنه ورکوو تر څو د تریبیون شاته راسي او خپله خبرې پیل کړي.
اعوذ بالله من الشیطان الرجیم بسم الله الرحمن الرحیم. وزیر صاحب وزارت مالداری دکتر صاحب احدی، وزیر صاحب انکشاف داد حیات صاحب، وزیر صاحب دولت در امور مبارزه با حوادث جیلانی صاحب، وزیر صاحب صحت آمد دکتر صاحب مجرو، دکتر صاحب رامز زکبروف، معاون دفتر یوناما، همکارای محترم در NGO ها، دولت و همچنان دوایر بین المللی، السلام علیکم و رحمت الله و برکاته. اول اگر اجازه باشه چرا پیلم به انگلیسی میگم باز پس بعض موضوعات خلاصه براتون میگم. I'll speak in English and then switch to Dari for my audience in the country. Toran is a refugee from Maiwand in Kandahar. He was interviewed in front of his makeshift tent. Listen to what he said. Now I have reached here where I have nothing. Here there is no fighting, no war, but right now there is an intense war in my hometown. I was working on my land. I was cultivating wheat. I came to this desert, but we can stay and live on these sands. On this camp floor we are sitting now, people are dying from hunger. And another Afghan voice speaks up. The drought has destroyed my land. It has drained the water. We can't get enough water to drink or to clean ourselves. We fled our homes because there was no water. I won't remember a season as terrible as this. Farming is my only income, and I have 10 children. My friends, distinguished guests, are there words that can convey the tragedy of this today? Ordinary Afghans, hardworking people, people who want to tend to their land and raise their children, face a drought that strips them from their homes and steals their food. It steals their future. When I first saw these numbers of how many people this drought would affect, I could not believe my eyes. 12 million people, 1/3 of our country, 3 times the entire population of Kabul city. 12 million ruined farmers, 12 million families whose children will not have enough to eat. 12 million people whose lives now depend on kindness of strangers. I am the Minister of Finance, but this appeal is not from my ministry. It's not even from the government. It's from all of Afghanistan. It's an appeal to humanity to show that by working together, we can save 12 million fellow human beings from hunger and destitution. We have a very small window of opportunity to cushion the worst effects of this drought, but only if we act now. We can feed people who have no food. We can keep their children in school. We can help prevent women and girls from being trafficked by desperate families. This can be done. Today, we launch an appeal to prevent a tragedy. It's a tragedy made in part by weather, but in large measure, it is also a tragedy made by man. The drought is real and it is severe, but as terrible as the drought would be, the Taliban's offensive is making its effects infinitely worse. Farms are being abandoned. People who could be harvesting crops to tide themselves over cannot even visit their fields or repair their canals. I don't want to dwell on casting blame, but there is no ceasefire, no reduction in the violence. There is only the drought. For the past several months, our teams from ministries have worked closely with the humanitarian community to assess the drought and build a strategy for averting a disaster. Collaboration has been close and constructive. We have been as conservative and pragmatic as possible in our estimates, not just for needs, but also for the ability to deliver. The humanitarian appeal being launched today has the government's full support and endorsement. However, we, both the UN and our government, recognize that if we only provide humanitarian relief, we can only quickly set and play a long cycle of displacement and dependency. Afghanistan today is still dotted with IDPs and IDP camps where people displaced 2 decades ago are locked in limbo, still unable to return to their home to restart ruined farms. Fed and sheltered by the world's generous donations, they survive in settlements that are neither here nor there. An entire generation lost to the country. Unless something is done, this cycle will repeat. The number of internally displaced people, the IDPs, has already started to rise. To limit displacement and find enduring solutions to the effects of the drought, the UN and the government plan the UN and government plan abolishes the boundary between humanitarian relief and development-driven recovery. A core principle of the appeal is to keep people in their communities, to provide immediate short-term jobs, rehabilitate critical infrastructure so communities can better cope with the impacts of climate crisis, and strengthen the provision of frontline health care, especially for mothers and children. We are where people are not already displaced by the conflict. This is a feasible objective. To achieve this goal, the government and the UN have developed a strategy that plays to each partner's comparative advantage. The government will fully participate in the humanitarian response through our first Vice President's leadership and direct engagement with the humanitarian cluster through the Afghanistan National Disaster Management Authority, the Ministry of Agriculture, Irrigation and Livestock, the Ministry of Rural Rehabilitation and Development, and the Ministry of Health. On the ground, much of this work will be led by our humanitarian partners, but to complement the humanitarian efforts, the Afghan government will mobilize and fund 4 of its largest, most successful national priority programs. Our programs for health, for community development, for education, and water. Each of these programs has broad coverage in drought-affected provinces, and we will be scaling those up, including further work on seed and livestock distribution so that farmers can quickly get back to farming. The needs assessment is still underway. The current budget estimate for the government support for these programs that will be critical to complement humanitarian work will total $150 to $200 million. As many of you know, each of the national priority program has a long history of successful implementation in Afghanistan, including special measures to ensure the participation of women and girls. We welcome your review and support. This is quite literally no other way to get these services to such a large number of affected communities. We will also look to our ARTF partners to help us offset some of these costs, some by savings and relocations, but some by encouraging new contributions to the ARTF in recognition of its role in paving the way for Afghan's recovery from the drought. As the Minister of Finance, it is my duty to talk about money. We don't have enough. The humanitarian appeal is not even 50% funded. As we all know, that the global COVID pandemic has made international assistance and humanitarian support even more scarce. From our side, we're trying our best to raise funds. I will be making a special appeal to the wealthy Afghan and diaspora communities to help their countrymen. And we have already started a dialogue with our development partners to help fund those 4 national priority programs. Even as we speak, my team and the President are going through the budget to make sure that all non-security spending is directed towards the people, including support for the drought. But this will still not be enough. In a context where, as you all know, our budget is almost entirely strained by the war, we need to act urgently and effectively. We must combine the strengths of our government systems and the strengths of our humanitarian partners. Together, we can help protect lives of 12 million people who are at the risk of starvation today. But it is also not just about those lives. It's the impact of the drought of this scale is intergenerational. Its aftershocks will be felt not just in Afghanistan, but globally. Even toddlers, every toddler that becomes stunted, every mother that dies from hunger, every family that is forced to flee their home, every child forced to miss school, these are all families whose futures hang in peril for generations to come. Compounded with the challenge of conflict and insecurity, inaction against this drought will not only devastate Afghanistan's future, but its long-term impact will reverberate regionally and even globally. We thank you for your attention and support. همکارای محترم، یک چند موضوع مهمه با دری براتان بگم. امروز ما با یک بحران انسانی وخیم روبروستیم. این ناشی از تشدد جنگ، خشکسالی و اثرات پاندمیک کووید بوده. ضرورت به ایست که به حداقل 12 میلیون افغان کمک رسانده شود و امکاناتی که در محدوده دولت و همچنان کمک‌های که دوستای بین المللی ما میکنن از او کدایی زیادتر است. لذا ضرورت به ایست که یک درخواست مشترک کمک‌های بشردوستانه که جمهوری اسلامی افغانستان و سازمان ملل متحد امروز برای انداخته شود تا از یک فاجعه انسانی جلوگیری شود. چند آموخته‌هایی که از خشکسالی‌های گذشته و از همچو آفات داشتیم، این که رهبری دولت و هماهنگی کلی را که دولت پیش ببره همیشه نتایج بهتره میتونیم با او به دست بیاریم. از این خاطر تمام رهبری از این پروسه زیر دفتر معاون صاحب اول ریاست جمهوری صورت میگیره. مکانیزم همکاری نه صرف ارگان‌های دولتی بلکه ملل متحد و NGO ها هم از او صورت میگیره. عرضه خدمات باید در طریق و عرضه نمودن اونا انعطاف داشته باشیم. انعطاف ما مد نظر گرفتیم که در زیر چتر کلی ملل متحد و NGO ها هم بتانن کارهای خود پیش ببرند ولی رهبری عمومی را دولت پیش میبره. شناسایی که ساحات که از خشکسالی و همچنان از جنگ صورت گرفته از طرف وزارت ها شناسایی شده. ضرورت به هماهنگی بهتر است. یک برنامه ملل متحد وجود داره و همچنان دولت هم برنامه‌های مختلف خود دارن که حتما وزیر صاحبا در این مورد ازی میپردازن، ولی هماهنگی کلی مهم است. کمک رسانی نه صرف بشردوستانه باید باشه بلکه ابعاد انکشاف هم باید مد نظر بگیریم، چون که بعض موضوعات خشکسالی امکان دارد چون تغییر اقلیم ما از اون متاثر میشیم، تجربه میکنیم. به سالهای آینده هم تیار باشیم تا این مشکلات رخ نده. باز هم از توجهتان تشکر. سوالهای داشته باشین سوالها رو میگیریم و طبعا وزیر صاحبا برنامه خود هم در خلاص حتما فشرده خدمتتان ارائه میکنن. تشکر.
د مالیې وزارت له سرپرست وزیر ښاغلي محمد خالد پاینده څخه یوه نړۍ مننه چې د بشري مرستو ګډه غونډه کې د افغانستان اسلامي جمهوریت او د ملګرو ملتونو د سازمان په غونډه کې خبرې وکړې. خانواده محترم رسانه‌ها، اگر کس پرسش‌های در پیوند به صحبت و سخنرانی آقای پاینده دارند میتونن که پرسش‌های خود مطرح کنن یک و یک و جناب وزیر صاحب یادداشت میگیرن، در پایان باز به پرسش‌های شما دوباره پاسخ میدن. مهربانی از طلو نیوز.
تشکر آقای پاینده. مرزا حافظی هستم از طلو نیوز. چند سوال دارم، البته یادداشت کنیم. خب شما از نگاه قانون سرپرست هستین و قانون هم عقد صلاحیت قراردادها را برای شما داد یا خیر؟ مثلا عزل و نصب و کارمندان و همچنان لغو معینت‌ها، در حالی که وقت سرپرستی شما هم گذشته. یک درباره سفرتان به ولایت هرات بگوین، رفتن گفتن چند تعداد از کارکنان بندر دزد بودن یا دزدی گیر شدن و یا چی کردن این مردمان و قضیه چه به سانوالی معرفی شدن یا خیر؟ و درباره بندر اسلام قلعه و ترغندی بگوین، قبل از او چقدر عایداتان بود و حالی که به دست مخالفین
برادر
سقوط
این
کردن؟
سوالای چی را میشه ما پسان بیرون براتان جواب بتم. لطفاً به می اپیلی که کردیم بر درخواست بشر دوستانه حرمت بگذارین. سوال اگر در اون مورد باشه وزیر صاحب هم تشریف دارن، امور جواب میتیم. باز دیگر
خب ما شاید در بیرون شما حاضر نشوین، اما ما مجبور هستیم چون در نشرات زنده است سوال بکنیم. هدایت داده شده، اگر نمیخواین ادامه ندیم.
سوالات در مورد کنفرانس امروز دارین؟
بدون غیر از کنفرانس امروز است.
اول سوالای دیگه اگر کسایی دارن در مورد امروز اپیل و درخواست ما، لطفاً اونا رو بگین. وزیر ما در پسان میبینیم. درست؟
یعنی شما به سوالات پاسخ نمیدین، درست است؟
کسی دیگه سوال داره در پیام برام امروز؟ نه؟ بسیار جان جان
تشکر میکنم از شما از همکارای ما، از وزیر صاحبای محترم لطف کردین از ملل متحد و طبعا تعقیب از زیر کار ما با همکارای بین المللی ادامه خواهد داشت.
بسیار تشکر از حضور هر یک شما. همکارای ما از مطبوعات اعلامی مطبوعاتی را به شکل نوشتاری خدمت هر یک شما همکاران ما میرسانند و بازم اگر در پیوند به این موضوع کس پرسش داره، اعضای محترم کابینه در خدمت شماست. در غیر از او برنامه ما به اختتام رسید. تشکر از حضور هر یک شما.